Welcome. I'm Julie Bacon, and you're listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast, a podcast for dog handlers who are on a mission to achieve big goals. Here I share lessons, insights, personal stories, and tools you can apply during your next show, trial, or test to help you strengthen your mental game and hopefully cue more consistently. Be sure to check out the show notes where you'll find details about the episodes, plus important links, including the link to the Dogged Planner and Workbook created just for handlers on a mission. So if you're ready to improve your competitive mindset, get out of your own way, and connect with your dog like never before, then it's time to get comfy, bring an open mind, and work your mindset. Hello there, and welcome back to the podcast. Okay, this week I'm continuing a conversation that I started in the newsletter and blog that I did earlier this week. So hope you're subscribing. Link is in the show notes. You know where to go. And that was on this concept of the invisible index card. Okay, so but to set that up, let me take a step back. When I coach clients, and even in my membership, I talk often about using index cards, right? Like writing it down, like writing down words, mantras, reminders, process goals, whatever, and having it handy, like in your training bag or the bag you take into the building with you, or, you know, maybe it's the last thing you read before you get out of the car in the morning before a trial. And it's a super simple concept, right? It's just like write it down on an index card and take it with you. And so that is wonderful, and people have been doing that for years, and I love the stories that come back about it. And, you know, you can go so far as to write it on your hand with a Sharpie. I mean, we've done all kinds of things, right, to keep our thoughts, the thoughts that we want, rather, top of mind. But in a coaching call recently, and just kind of in a way of sort of talking about it, or talking to clients about it, I've sort of uncovered or been asking about, like, well, what is your invisible index card, right? What are the thoughts that you are taking in the ring that maybe you don't know that you're taking in the ring? Maybe you're not even conscious that you're doing. It could be thoughts of like being not worthy, or, you know, this isn't going to go well, or, you know, my nerves always get the best of me. And those are like, that's kind of your invisible index card, because in a sense, those are your mantras. Those are the things you are saying to yourself. Those are the things that you are filling your brain with. Those are the things, I mean, I hate to tell you, that you're visualizing. So there is such a thing, in essence, of like kind of a negative mantra. I mean, I don't think that that's how it's talked about in all the cool chick spiritual circles, but there is. Like, even saying the phrase like, I don't have enough time, like, that's a negative mantra. And you guys, you have to remember how the brain works, right? The brain wants to make you the smartest human on the planet, okay? So the brain is going to work really hard to make everything you say the truth, okay? So if you say you always choke, you know, when it really counts, your brain is going to be like, bet. I got this. I can do this. I can do this. I can make sure that she always chokes when the chips are down, or whatever the phrase is, right? So we really need to be aware of that. And, you know, I talk a lot about self-talk and about the importance of how we talk to ourselves. And, you know, I'm always thrilled to get the stories back from people that they're like, wow, even one client recently was like, I didn't even realize how often I was talking badly about myself to myself, right? So even just building the awareness of what we're saying to ourselves. And so that is crazy important, right? I mean, I can't overstate how important that is, because imagine if someone else was saying these horrible things to you. Like, first of all, you'd probably want to throat punch them, but also you'd stop hanging around that person. You would be like too negative, like, no, thank you. And you would really start to reject that. Okay. And, you know, some of us grow up with people around us that are like that. And it takes us many decades and possibly some therapy to work that out and realize that, like, no, that's not who I am. Okay. So don't let that mean girl be you, right? Talking to you in that way. Okay. So that brings us back to, though, this concept of an invisible index card, because all of those self-talk thoughts, those like kind of nasty thoughts, you can build awareness around, and you can start eliminating them, or at least stopping them in their tracks. Or, whenever one comes up, think about anything else just to like literally kind of change the channel in your brain. Like if you're saying, horrible things like, oh, you always choke, then even if you thought about pizza, like that would be better, right? Because you're no longer doubling down on those thoughts, and you're no longer thinking about those thoughts, because it does become a vicious circle. Okay. But those things, the ones we have awareness about, we can start to do something about, right? I can change the channel. I can think about pizza. I can distract myself in other ways. I can improve my self-talk. I can choose a better thought. The invisible ones are the sneaky ones. And that's something that I uncovered recently that I really wasn't giving enough credit to. But these invisible ones are the ones we don't realize we're having. Okay? And so those then create kind of an invisible pressure, could increase our ring nerves, could make us downright, anxiety prone, but we don't know that we're having them. So they're tougher to uncover. So we go to a trial, for instance, and let's say that we've been preparing at home, or even let's say we've been running great, like the weekend before trial was fantastic, and we go to this trial, and somewhere in the back of our heads is rattling around like, I should cue. We're so prepared. I got this, no problem, right? And some of that sounds positive, right? Oh, I should cue. We're prepared. This is good. We've been running really well. But it also can be disguised as pressure, because now I have these expectations. Oh, we're totally prepared, therefore I should cue. It's very easy. I train my dog. I go to a show. My dog cues. Yes, obviously, this is an easy chain, right? In the day of expectations and, same day deliveries and all this kinds of stuff, we're very used to that instant gratification program. But what's sneaky is that sometimes that becomes pressure. So this I should cue thing, especially when you don't cue, all of a sudden you see that it was an expectation that you had. And it was an expectation that you did not give voice to, right? And so you didn't even know it was there, right? Even, another one I've heard is, but my dog should be able to do this. And these aren't things that we say before we run, really. They're usually things we say after we run and a mistake has been made, or we don't cue or whatever. We're like kind of surprised, right? And by the way, I want you to always be surprised, right? I don't want you to be like welcoming, failure or falling short or what have you, or making a mistake. We don't want that to be normalized per se. But when we uncover that sort of after we run, and we're thinking like, but my dog totally knows how to do this. Why couldn't we put that together in the ring? Like, I trained so hard. We were ready. We know the skills. We have all the things. How could this possibly go wrong? So in that moment, and I realize hindsight's 20/20, but in that moment, we suddenly have the clarity of that hidden expectation, meaning the hidden thing that was on that invisible index card. Okay, the index card that you were carrying around that really secretly said, I should cue. My dog knows this. It'll be easy. Like, I've trained so hard. It should just go well. Like, I just expect to cue. And only in the rear view do we sort of realize that that was an expectation that we were setting. And with it came pressure, right? When we have these expectations, and when we even when we don't fall short, but just walking into the ring, we don't have to feel nervous, because they're probably even kind of lower down, maybe even in your unconscious, that you don't feel nervous per se, but it is a pressure. People are watching, whatever that pressure is. Okay. So these thoughts are kind of quiet. I call them sneaky. They're a little automatic. They're just sort of lurking in there. And they come from all kinds of places, right? Past results, comparison to others is, of course, a good one. Our own pressure to prove that we're making progress. The way we identify as a good handler, right? Air quotes, right? Whatever good handler means to you. So that's the sneaky thought, right? Those are the ones that you don't really realize you're having, all right? And they matter because like I mentioned, they're creating pressure even if you don't feel nervous, right? They can rob you of your being present, or getting into the flow. And they can affect obviously how you handle, how you process mistakes, and certainly how you bounce back. And I think that bouncing back thing is big because sometimes when we have these expectations, the surprise, of not hitting them really hits us in the face. It really is the wallop that we were whoa, where did that come from? And sometimes the surprise of it just impacts us a lot more and makes it harder for us to recover. Okay? So we don't want to feel panicked for a belief to be messing up our performance. And I'm laughing because sometimes people, it's an evil laugh. It's not a funny laugh, but I mean, people get then worried that it's going to happen again, right? Or they get fearful of this not being able to uncover it and oh my God, now what's going to hit me in the face, right? What is going to surprise me now? And then that is something that then makes them nervous. But it's all coming from this deeper sort of unconscious, maybe it's a limiting belief, but it's not even a limiting belief because the walking in thinking oh, I know this, we've got this, I expect to cue, could be underneath to the extent that on top of that, you might have process goals. I know what the 3 things I'm going to focus on, but underneath you have the expectation. And underneath you're judging your success by this expectation that you may or may not know is lurking. And if it sounds a little complicated and a little nefarious, it is. It so is. And unfortunately, like I mentioned, we don't necessarily see it until it's in the rear view mirror, right? Until after the fact. We come out of the ring, we make the mistake, and we are really almost disproportionately upset about it, right? Maybe it was just one thing, but we're tired of it being just one thing, okay? All right, so I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to tell you how you can sort of start to uncover it so that you get to it before you walk in the ring, and then we'll write a better card. If you love this podcast, you'll love the Q membership. Each month, we tackle topics like ring nerves, confidence, and mental toughness, breaking them down into bite-sized, actionable lessons. You'll also get a private Facebook group for support and access to all of my online courses. It's like having a mindset coach in your pocket. Ready to get started? Join us. The link is in the show notes or head to theqcoach.com. Back to the episode. All right, so if you think you have one of these or you want to make sure you don't, either whatever motivates you, right, to figure this out, as I said, a lot of these things show up after the fact. So in order to try to uncover them, we're going to kind of ask after the fact questions, okay? Meaning, even before you go in the ring, or maybe you're reflecting on a previous run, that would be even better because it's a little more real. But you're going to kind of ask yourself, what did I expect, right? What would have made me feel like a failure, right? What would I be embarrassed to say out loud, And maybe you can ask as blatant as, what are my expectations here? What do I expect to happen and why? Okay. The words you want to look out for in your own answers are should, that's a huge one. I should have been able to cue. I should be able to execute this. My dog should know how to do this. I should know how to do this. I've been training forever. I should know how to do this. Should is a big one. Have to, need to, all of those things that, are very loaded words and phrases. So pay attention for that. Also listen for, again, in your own words, your own head, your own journaling, listen for like, I'm going to call them an emotional hangover, right? That like a past run that you're still sort of bruised from, right? You still sort of emotionally have big feelings about it. Like if you go back and think about that run, you can feel your emotions sort of triggering and kind of igniting back to life, okay? And then really check for those stories that you're telling yourself about yourself or about your dog or about you as a team or about you in an environment or what have you. Now, normally I want you to ask those questions because we're trying to uncover like the negative thing. But again, some of these are going to be disguised as positive things, right? Because, for instance, that last some stories you're telling about you or your dog. You might say, well, the story I'm telling about me or my dog is my dog knows this, and therefore they should be able to cue. Oh, wait, I heard it. Should be able to cue, right? So sometimes it's a weird positive thing that ends up being the pressure point. My dog knows this stuff. I know this stuff. We should cue. We should be able to finish the title. We should be able to do this. Like, this isn't that hard. Like, what's our problem? Like, that's all where that added pressure is coming. That's what's on your invisible index card, okay? The card, the thoughts that you are having before you walk into the ring. You know, maybe somewhere in the morning, who knows when you're having those thoughts, but they're down in there, okay? So ask yourself those questions and see if you can't unearth them, all right? So let's write a better card. Okay, because, you know, the example I always use is when we have puppies and they're chewing on our favorite shoes, we don't just take away the shoe, we replace the shoe with something they can chew on. Okay, so it's just an analogy us dog people seem to understand. But the point is you can't just say, don't think about pink elephants. You have to give a replacement thought. So I can't just say, don't have expectations, right? We have to have a replacement thought. And in this case, we have to have a replacement index card. So do the thing. Get the index cards or find a cool piece of paper or a cool piece of cardstock or cardboard or something in your house to write on, right? And I want you to choose a new thought. Choose a positive thought that isn't going to add pressure to the situation. Okay? It should be short. It should be supportive. It should be memorable. And maybe you write out a longer sentence and then you circle one word in it, and that one word helps you remember the whole sentence or the whole thought. Okay? But this is the last thing we want in your head. Okay? It should be specific. It might even be specific to this dog on this particular day. Right? Something you want to have in your head. Maybe you need to read it in the morning. Maybe you need to stuff it in your bag and you glance at it when you go back to the crate and just have that be the last thing that you say to yourself. Okay? So we're learning together. You know, we value connection. You know, connection is everything. Let's go learn something. You know, and this is a triggering word, but let's go have fun. And I've done a whole podcast on fun. I've actually had to do 2 on the fact that I understand that we're not necessarily having fun. We're just really passionate and we love our sport. Okay. But this is not frivolous. And some people think fun is frivolous. And again, that's for a separate podcast. But what is it you want to believe? And what is it that is not going to add pressure? And maybe even write down those process goals, right? I mean, this index card habit started with process goals because we don't want to just focus on the process goals when we go out of the ring. We want to be able to focus on those process goals or when we go into the ring. I don't know what did I just say? When we go into the ring, we want to focus on them also when we come out because that's how we should be measuring success. So many are going into the ring with process goals and saying, yes, connection's important. You know, I want to make sure I make eye contact here, there, whatever, praise my dog here, whatever your process goals are. But then we come out and we're like, I didn't cue. I'm like, oh, I thought we had process goals. Where did this outcome goal come from? Right? So process goals are another great thing to put to that index card. And we know from all of my going ons, process goals are those things we are 100% in control of executing. Okay? So make the new index card and replace those thoughts in your head. And if you aren't sure, if you still have not uncovered them, but you suspect that there's something sneaky underneath there, then just start replacing the thoughts with this new thought. Start taking control of your mind, of the thoughts that you're having, and start wiring yourself with these positive, not even necessarily affirmations, though I love me a good affirmation, but just these positive thoughts, themes even, concepts you want to have in your head. Call them a mantra, call them a phrase. I don't care what you call them. Just say them. Say them to yourself. Hear yourself saying them in your brain. Say them the last thing before you walk into the ring. Whatever it takes to push out those negative ideals and push in some positive ones. Okay? So in sum, right? Some of these invisible thoughts that we're having are becoming pressure points, and pressure is going to affect our performance. It just is. And it's certainly going to affect how we feel about our performance. And if we're so mad about it, then it's really hard to extract the feedback from those runs, right? Because we're just too mad about it to really be like rational and think about it and extract those little tidbits, right? We don't want any freaking tidbits. We would rather have the green ribbon, all right? So you want to get to those invisible thoughts if possible, and you want to replace them, because replacing them is how they get pushed out, okay? So we're not trying to train harder necessarily, but we are trying to think and speak to ourselves with much better intention. Consistent, preferably positive intention. Okay? So homework, of course, go to the index card store and start really thinking about this, and in your journalings, see if you can uncover some of these thoughts and try to build some consistency around it. Sometimes we drop the good habits when things are going well, and yet it's those good habits that got us there. So keep it up. Make it part of your ritual. Figure out kind of where in your morning ritual it goes, and really commit and give it a try. And of course, let me know how it goes. And no matter what you're up to this week with your dogs, I hope you have a fantastic time. Thanks so much for listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast with me, Julie Bacon. I am so grateful for your precious time. Check out my Dogged Planner workbook and journal available on Amazon. Just search for Dogged Planner. I also offer monthly membership that's perfect for ongoing support of your awesome goals. Check out theqcoach.com for details, or just stop by and check out all the ways you can work on your mindset. And be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at theqcoach and let me know how it's going. Finally, please share, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps us podcasters tremendously. Plus, I know I get my best podcast recommendations from friends. Thanks, and have a great week with your dogs.